Hey, it's the good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit reminding you that nobody Patreons like we Patreon. So join us at C4FAP and go over to Patreon/Comics Fun Profit and sign up at a level of your choosing. There's various tiers with various goodies for you. Something that everyone gets at any level is you get to be a part of our Slack channel community. And you get early and ad-free access to all our episodes. But wait, there's more. So go over to Patreon/Comics Fun Profit and check out all we have to offer. We urge you, sign up today.
Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing Anthony Award winner writer. He won the award in 2005 and 2011. I'll be interviewing writer Jason Starr. He is here to promote his latest novel, The Next Time I Die, and it's a book from the Hard Case Crime publisher. Now, this book is available through Jason's website, and it's Jason Starr. It's all JASONSTARR.com, and at your local bookstores. Jason, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for
Oh,
having me on.
no, thank you very much. So, Jason, I'm going to go over your incredible writing background. Please feel free to correct me at any point. I'm not going to cover all the books because everything you wrote, because it'll just take up the whole hour, and but I'm just going to point out some key ones, or just point out a few. So now, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong. Your first hard case crime novel, you wrote back in, is it 2009? Fake ID, is that correct?
That's the first one that was just written by me alone. I also co-wrote 4 novels with an Irish writer, Ken Bruin. So there was Bust, Slide, The Max, and Pimp was the most recent. So there was a 4-book series
Oh,
called the
okay.
Max and Angela series that we did at Hard Case. But yeah, that was like the only previous standalone that I did before this one, The Next Time I Die. So
Okay.
Fake ID, that was that one.
Okay. And then also you've written also a number of other numerous books, such as the Pack series. It was a 2-book series. Is that correct? The Pack series, regarding werewolves. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a 2-book series with yep, there's The Pack and The Craving was the sequel.
Okay. And then also the other books that you've written is Panic Attack, Code Caller, and you also wrote some media tie-in books such as Ant-Man, Natural Enemy, and Gotham, based on the well, not is related to the TV show Gotham City of Monsters, and this just to name a few. Um, and then you've also written some comics, and I'm just going to go over just some titles that you've written for Justice Inc. from DC Comics that ran from 2009 to 2010. You wrote the Wolverine series for Marvel under their Max title line, if I got that correct, from
Right.
2012 to 2014. And recently from AWA, you wrote Red Border and Casual Flames. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then also you have written some screenplays, like one of your stories called The Bully, that it was turned into a short film back in 2010. You've also co-written a screenplay based on one of your novels called Code Caller with Clayton Jacobson. And you had and correct me if I'm wrong, some of your other novels have been adapted for movies or TV. Is that correct?
Many of them are in development. Many of my books have been optioned for TV and
Mhm.
film, and occasionally I've written screenplays. My level of involvement varies depending on the project.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, I'm going to ask, do you want to add anything else to this, like a previous work that you're very proud of, that you want listeners to check out?
No, I mean anyone who's wants to check out all of my books, just go to jasonstar.com. There's information about all my books, comics. Cold Caller that you mentioned was my first one.
Mhm.
And then I've done about a book a year. Since then, I've done some books with Vintage Crime, their Black Wizard imprint, and then I did those Penguin books that you mentioned, The Back and the Craving. I've done some books with St. Martin's Press. So I've done a lot of psychological thrillers, crime novels, and comics simultaneously.
Okay. Now, I'm going to just jump ahead to one question. Since you already mentioned your website, where can listeners follow you on social media?
At Jason Starr Books on Twitter, Instagram,
Mhm.
and I'm Jason Starr fan on AOL.
Okay. All right. And
On Facebook.
okay. And then actually, Jason, I also want to say thank you very much, because I know when I joined Twitter like about a couple of years ago, you were one of my earlier followers. Thank you very much. I mean, thank you very much. Yeah. And honestly, for the last year, I've been meaning to try to get you on the show. I just couldn't find, I guess, the right time, but this is the perfect time right now. So you can,
Great.
yeah. So also, before I start the interview, I want to give a big shout out to Hannah Bahedri of Superfan Promotions for setting up this interview. Hannah, thank you very much. Jason, I'm going to ask, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's great.
Okay. And then also I got some information, from your web page, your Wikipedia page, and also an interview that you did, a YouTube podcast called Traversing the Stars, that came out just recently, actually back in June of last month, June 22nd. So I got some of my information from them as well. So yeah. So Jason, I'm just gonna start. Basic question: where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York City, in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you remember what was your first comics that you read, or?
I read a lot of comics growing up. I used to read Dick Tracy and Amazing
Nice.
Spider-Man. Yeah, definitely a lot of Marvel
Mm-hmm.
comics. Growing up, that's when they used to sell them at candy stores
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd always go out and get the monthly comics. A friend and I remember we made our own comic once. So I
Nice.
definitely was into comics when I was growing up. But then I didn't really get back into it until much later on, until I'd written a bunch of novels and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sort of got into it through my novel writing. But
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I was a comics fan.
Ah, okay. And then also too, what kind of books did you read while you were growing up?
Um, I mean, I read the books they just assigned to me in school, the usual
Mm-hmm.
classics, and a lot of books on sports, like sports biographies. I was just very into sports
Uh-huh.
growing up. So, uh, yeah, I didn't really get into the sort of books that I like writing until maybe I was in college, crime fiction and thrillers. Um, but I think I remember reading a Mickey Spillane novel once, just because it was on my parents' shelf. But it wasn't anything I was exposed to in any great way until later on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right. That's pretty cool. I'm just gonna ask, saying when you start to, when you start to read novels and stuff, who was your favorite writer that stuck out, that you kind of oh yes, I gotta buy his or her book whenever it came out?
Well, when I really got into writing, in college, I guess I was one of the first writers I really liked was John Cheever, who wrote best known for his short stories. I think just because they were so character driven and they had such rich characters, and they were set in the New York area. And that's when I got into writing dialogue. The dialogue in those stories was attractive to me. And then
Mm-hmm.
Raymond Carver's short stories. I'd read some Hemingway in high school because it was assigned to me, but then
Yes.
I think I had a new appreciation of it, of the language in Hemingway, and the sparsity of the language, and the directness of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think any writers who wrote very direct, clear prose was just more interesting to me. And something that I was more aspiring to uh, than some other type of writing that I'd been exposed to. And then later on, when I discovered crime writing, Jim Thompson, uh, James M. Cain, Chandler. It was also that same spare sort of writing that I liked, but they're also very plot-driven books. So that was really what sort of the marriage of like plot-driven plus that spare writing is what really got me into writing.
I'm going to ask you, do you have a favorite hole-in-the-wall bookstore that you go to?
A hole-in-the-wall bookstore.
Yeah, because because I mean,
I wouldn't call it a hole in the wall, but like if I want used books, I go to the Strand, like in New York, downtown. I mean, the back of the store still has like these, cavernous shelves of used books. So like, that's where I'll go. I mean, there's still like scattered used bookstores around Manhattan, but not as many as there used to be.
Yeah.
But I do love going, like finding when I'm traveling or something, or in another state, just like coming upon a used bookstore, and
yes,
it's always fun looking at the shelves. Like you never know what you're gonna find. And,
yes, I agree. I hear you. And then I'm gonna just ask, like, how did your journey started writing novels at first? How did that come about?
I think it required well, at first I was writing plays like after college because like I was saying, like my writing was very dialogue driven, so it just seemed natural. And then I really like theater. I just like the conflict and the characters and the experience of live theater. So I was very into plays and playwriting. But at the time I was starting to discover crime fiction, and I think there's a shift for every writer where you have to, at some point, just start writing the stuff you like to read. It seems like a very simple. It doesn't seem like it would require much of an epiphany to do that. But I think a lot of writers in writing programs tend to try to write literary fiction or a certain type of fiction. Because they think that's like what you're supposed to do as a writer. And so I think for me, it was just a matter of like really writing what I enjoyed reading, plot driven stories with action and dialogue and morally ambiguous characters and stories like that.
And then I'm also going to ask, how did your journey started writing into comics?
Yeah, like I was saying before, that really came out of writing novels.
Okay. Yeah.
Some editors at DC and Marvel are also crime fiction fans, and they at the time at Marvel, Axel Alonso was in charge of the was one of the editors, and then he ultimately became editor in chief at Marvel. He's very into crime fiction, and I believe he was very responsible for getting people like me, Victor Gischler, Dwayne Krasinski, Greg Hurwitz. So a lot of writers who were known for crime started writing comics. Partially because of Axel being at Marvel, but the stuff simultaneously at DC, Will Dennis, an editor at DC, had asked me to write an introduction for Brian Azzarello's crime comic, 100 Bullets. So I wrote that, and then I wrote an introduction for one of the trade paperbacks of Scalped by Jason Aaron, and because of that, we started getting into conversations about me pitching some ideas, and I wound up doing a graphic novel called The Chill for Vertigo. So that was like my first Vertigo project.
Oh, okay. And then I just want to ask, can you describe the feelings when you first saw your name on your first novel or your first comic?
Yeah, no, they're both very exciting. Like I remember when Cold Caller was first published in this country by Norton.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually published in the UK first, actually, by No Exit Press, and I went over there actually went right around the time it was launched. So
Mm-hmm.
so the first time I saw my books in stores was in London, actually, and it definitely is a surreal feeling at first, especially if you've been aspiring to be a writer for a long time. And um, I think aspiring to do anything requires an element of fantasizing about it
Mm-hmm.
first, and then
Yeah.
trying to make the fantasy come true.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there, yeah. So I think because of that, there's a certain surreal following. I remember quality. I remember when I was writing plays, and I had a play produced in college. It was actually similar because you're writing a play, and then like
Mm-hmm.
it was student actors, but it was still performed. And you're
Yeah.
hearing your words spoken, and it in comics, yeah, definitely. I would say when DC and Marvel published stuff for the first time, like having grown up and reading comics and going to comic
Mm-hmm.
stores, uh, yeah, it was like the 10-year-old in me was like excited about that. Like, seeing,
Mm-hmm.
wow, my name's on a Marvel comic. Like it was, there's a surreal sort of feeling to that.
That is so cool. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Now we're going to get into the meat of the interview. We're going to start talking about The Next Time I Die. Let me read a few quotes that people have written already. So, quote: "The next time I die is a paranoid noir freakout play on playing its own one of a kind game, and it's a shameless page turn." That quote is from Joe Hill. And then this other quote is quote, an audacious mind bending of a novel, a high octane cocktail of infidelity, murder, and alternate realities, served straight from the Twilight Zone. And end quote. That's from Wallace. I'm going to hopefully Wallace. I hope I pronounce her last name correctly. Strobe. He's
Right,
the author of the Chrissa Stone novels.
right.
That is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm going to ask, how did you come up with the idea for the novel?
Um, I mean, most of my like similar to like I come up with any idea, it's always just based on a situation. In this case, it's about a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
defense attorney in New York who is preparing for one of the biggest cases of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Unexpectedly, his marriage falls apart and he's kicked out of his house basically by his
Mm-hmm.
wife, and he's driving away in the snow, and he stops at a convenience store, and there's a domestic dispute going on,
Mm-hmm.
and he does the right thing. He steps in, he tries to help the woman who's arguing with the older man, and
Mm-hmm.
the older man like takes out a knife, stabs him in the gut,
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
he should have died, but he winds up in another reality that's somewhere between. The best way to describe it is somewhere between Philip K. Dick and the Twilight Zone.
Uh-huh.
So for this book, I definitely wanted to. I knew that I was going to take things in a different direction. That it was going to
Yes.
have a big twist in chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
It really takes it into a direction that's very different than anything else I've written. Mainly my books have been crime novels, psychological thrillers, and this is really my first book that has like a sci-fi twist
Mm-hmm.
to it. So I knew that it was going to have that twist. It was going to be have this other reality. I didn't really know all the details yet,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that it was going to require a lot of world building, and
Yes.
that it was going to be psychological. And I had some ideas for some plot points and twists, but that was the main gist of it. Like I just had, I wanted that setup.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that is so cool. And then already you've talked about, and readers, the first two chapters are, already available, the sample chapters are already available online. So it's, I know because I read the sample chapters through the Amazon website. And if I remember correctly, I think Jason, you tweeted out, I think IGN, one of their articles has the sample, the first two chapters.
Yeah, but you could read the samples, or it's just to like every bookstore. Go get a
Oh
copy.
yes, yes, but it's just the nice but it's just that the nice taste of, ooh, this tastes good.
Yep.
I'm going to go and get it, and I'm going to pick up the book. So yes.
Yeah, it has these great. I would really recommend getting the actual book, rather than even the. I mean, there's a Kindle version, of course, but the actual book has these great hard case crime covers, these retro pulp
Yes.
covers, and yeah, so it's always worth it just to have it. This one is by Claudia Caranfa, and she's done like a number of covers for hard case crime, and I think this is one of her best ones. So you'll definitely want it for your shelf, hopefully. So check it out.
All right. So you've already mentioned like Steven is the main character of the story. You've already mentioned he's a defense attorney, and then Laura is his wife. Are there any other main characters you want to talk about? That's going to
I
pop
mean,
up.
yeah, I mean that those are some of the characters. There's also this killer who he was representing as a defense attorney, who in this other reality is somewhat different than he was in that first reality. So the characters basically have at least two different versions of them,
Yes.
of themselves. So there are many other characters in the book, but yeah, the main thing is that this is a book that's told in the first person.
Yes.
Stephen, as the narrator, is not necessarily reliable, so we're just getting his version of events and the people in his life. And part of, I hope, what makes the book intriguing is that not only is there this alternate reality and like the solving the mystery of like what's going on in the physical world, it's also about these different versions of people and what that says about the decisions we make, and free will, fate versus free will, and nature versus nurture, and some bigger subjects like come out of that situation.
Now, I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, Jason. So, as you already mentioned, that the nature versus nurture, free will versus fate. Was this like a major theme that you wanted to explore before you started writing the book, or did it kind of like when you start to write, it start to present itself while you're writing?
Interesting. Well, the fate free will thing, I think, is something that does come up in a lot of my books, just as like a recurrent theme. Like it's not something I think about consciously, but if I was just trying to analyze my books the way a professor would, I could see that the theme is there. So I think that just came out. The nature versus nurture thing was definitely important because it has to do with these alternate realities, and
yes,
it is another version of you, really the same, are you the same person? But it wasn't something that I had plotted out in any great detail. When I'm plotting, I'm only really thinking about those big plot points.
Yes.
Almost the way I would like pitch an idea at like a Hollywood pitch meeting. It's hard for me. Maybe some writers could do it, but like in advance to really know what themes I'm going to end up dealing with, or those just seem to come out. I wouldn't say just naturally because it's coming from me, but as I'm writing the book, like I'll an idea that I want to explore might like come to me as during the actual writing, but it's not something I think about.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Now, I know you said in this book that you did a lot of world building, and did you like to have like some type of like a Bible or some type of like written out map of the book events and characters, like where they are in where they are in the story, just to keep things straight for you?
For the big, there's some stuff that's informational. Because I don't want to have any spoilers, but there's some stuff that's informational that I did. I mean, some things did come to me like while I was writing, and then I have to rethink it. But um, yeah, I mean, there was stuff to keep track of just because there are at least two realities in the
Yes.
book, and I had to make sure that um, I was staying consistent is the best way to do it. So like it was
Yes.
more like um, I wouldn't say it was like a full-fledged like Bible,
Oh
but
yeah.
it was sort of like a list of facts
Mm-hmm.
and somewhat of a timeline. Um, there's a particular date in the past that Stephen decides is like a very important date for like when he thinks this one reality shifted into the other, and he does some
Oh, nice.
personal exploration, um, and an investigation into the past events. So with that, like I really needed like a timeline. There were some specific things historically that happened in
Mm-hmm.
our world that
Mm-hmm.
diverged from the world that he's living in. So I just wanted to make sure that I had a sense of both timelines.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. Um, Fun question, because you said you're different, you had two different realities. Did you add, did you have fun adding little tidbits like such as like, the Jets win the Super Bowl in one reality, or in another, in the second reality, Cold Caller won best screenplay at the 96 Academy Award.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, there's nothing about cold caller in the book, but uh, there, there are some, yeah, I mean, there are some spots where I couldn't resist having some fun. Yeah, there are some references to me that are very subtle.
Hmm.
Maybe some like postmodern sort of references. There is something about the Jets, but that I couldn't resist doing. But in general, there certainly isn't too much of that. I'm very cognizant
Oh
of.
no, yeah.
I want the reader to stay in the story, but there are
Oh
certain
yeah.
points where a little levity is like really good for like the. I don't want I didn't want the book, any of my books, to like too dark and serious. Like
Hmm.
they're basically entertainment, and this one in particular, I want it to be like a beach read, like something you could read like in a day or two on a beach,
Hmm.
without it being too weighty. So
Yeah.
there are moments of levity like that, like where yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to like tell jokes, but like there are things
Oh
that are
yeah.
ironic and satirical that I think that might add a layer of amusement to the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. And then how did you team up with the hard case crime publisher? Like,
Well,
Mhm.
as we were talking about earlier, they've published me in the past
Yes.
a number of books with Ken Bruin and Fake ID.
Hmm.
Um, so we have no, we have a long history. The only ambiguity with this book was because it's depending how you view it, it's either a crime novel, it's a sci-fi novel, it's a sci-fi crime novel, but there's certainly a sci-fi element. And in the
Yes.
past, the only books that Hard Case has done that are anywhere near like science fiction or Ray Bradbury reprint they did. They've done a number of
That's
Michael
right. Yeah.
Crichton books, some Stephen King books, or
Hmm.
have a fantasy element that have also been
Hmm.
borderline sci-fi. Some of them. So it was a very short list. So I wasn't sure how Charles Ardai, my editor and publisher at Hard Case, would uh, would respond to the book. Uh, but he was incredibly enthusiastic, like
Hmm.
really like he saw the sci-fi element, but like he also sees like that any reader of crime fiction is also going to really like this because uh it is it is at its core still a crime novel
Yes.
that just happens to have a sci-fi twist.
Hmm. Okay. Now this part here, Jason, I'm because it happens in the first chapter. You saw my question, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to point this out. And I love the first page. You describe what Stephen is wearing during his argument with Laura in his study as
His
he's
wife,
preparing
yeah,
for an
Laura, his wife.
important.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, his wife, Laura. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love it how Steven says, he says, yeah, Laura is, wearing the dinner dress that they wore to dinner, and Steven goes, quote, I'm in jeans. I wore at dinner, but bare chested. I'm just asking, this is a lighthearted question. Was there any reason to putting the bare chested part in that section?
Yeah, actually. I guess like in whenever I'm writing, like I'm trying to set up a scene, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the conflict and how to heighten the tension and the mood. So yeah, I guess I wanted to put him like in a more. I'm thinking about like again, I used to write plays, so I'm thinking about like the
Mhm.
staging and like how it's set, and I'm sort of imagining it.
Yes.
And I wanted to put him like in a more vulnerable
Hmm.
uh,
Yes.
position. So it's sort of that's just how I saw him, like being like really caught off guard by this whole conversation. So I felt like if it took place maybe like right after dinner,
Hmm.
or like when she hadn't started getting undressed, she's like in the more uh, powerful sort of position at that
Hmm.
point.
Yes.
And she's the one who's made the decision. So like, yeah, it was just about like putting him in a position like where he'd really be caught off guard,
Hmm.
and like, and he's about to be kicked out of his house. So like,
Yes.
then he has to get dressed and like leave. So like, it was just like, it's just how I saw the scene.
No, okay. But the other thing I'm going to say for listeners, as Jason mentioned, we're reading Stephen through a first person, um, as in the first person view, because when I read that first chapter, it was like, oh my God, I feel like Laura was attacking. You get the feeling of, oh my God, she's attacking me type deal, because it's very intense. So yeah. So I'm going to move on. I'm slowly starting to wrap this up. So now, I know it's still in the very early stages, but can you talk about how Gil Adler Productions, now this production company, they produced the Tom Cruise movie Valkyrie and Superman Returns. It was they optioned the rights to the book. Um, I mean, can you just maybe explain the process to me? And because they optioned the book before it was even released, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean that sometimes happens.
Hmm.
I can't really talk about it too much, but it's
Yeah.
in. But yeah, but Gil is a producer who's, as you mentioned, he's done Valkyrie, Constantine,
Hmm.
Superman Returns, many other films and TV shows. And yeah, I mean, he read it early, the book, and he was extremely enthusiastic. And yeah, I mean, we have a similar vision for um, where what we want to do with it, and uh, I mean, we see it more for TV than as a film.
Hmm.
So yeah, I can't really comment any more on that, but
Yeah.
just check out, follow me on Twitter and jasonstar.com, and I have a newsletter. You could sign up for that. But there should be some updates on that soon.
Oh, okay. All right. And then I know you just did a recent Q&A at the St. Francis College over the weekend. How did that go?
It went well. I teach at St. Francis College. I teach in the MFA writing program.
Hmm.
uh, and we have events periodically. Actually, I just started the it's a MFA track, so you can get an MFA degree with a focus on comics and graphic novels, and it's actually the
Nice.
first program like this in the country. So anyone out there who's looking to get their MFA in writing and is interested in comics,
Hmm.
check us out at St. Francis College. Lots of information about it online. You could register, and it's a low residency program. So even though the school is in Brooklyn, There are two intensives every year in the summer and winter. So it's something you don't have to necessarily be in the New York area full time to be in this program. So check it out. It's going to be a focus on comics writing, and we're going to have editors and comics writers and liaisoning with artists, and hopefully it's just going to be like a very dynamic program that's just really getting off the ground. And we currently have fiction writing program, poetry, nonfiction. So yeah, it's an excellent program.
Okay. Oh, Jason, that's pretty cool. That is really awesome. Because I mean, because both of us, when we were growing up, we never heard colleges would have these classes or anything like that, or programs or stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the comics industry is so big now, and Marvel movies are big, and the whole industry is blown up. So it seems to me like there's a gap. Like writing programs should be paying more attention to comics, and it should be like a legitimate thing that that students should want to be studying, like when they're getting their masters. I think it's important to study like where the work is, and plus there's just so much interest in it. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential.
That's pretty cool. Now I'm going to ask if you can talk about it. I mean, I know it's kind of hard. You can't if things are in the early process, but do you have any more hard case crime stories lined up, for the next couple of years or anything like that?
Nothing specific. I mean, I'm working on a new, I guess I'm just call it a psychological thriller right now. So, until I show them the book, like I don't know what I'm. No specific.
Yeah.
No specific plans yet. So, but I'm sure we'll be working on something else down the line, because it's always been a great experience publishing with hard case crime. I love the look of the books. Great readers and fans read the books. So it's just always a lot of fun to publish with hard case crime.
Yeah. Okay. And then now I'm slowly wrapping things up. This is a fun question. Is there one dream writing gig, like either a novel or a comic series you've always want to work on, such as the old 1970s Hawaii Five-O tie? I'm just throwing out recommendations or whatever, like old Hawaii Five-O tie-in from the 70s, or in comics like Hawkeye as a detective. Is there any dream writing gig you still want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to do Deadpool for Marvel. I just think just the voice of that character and the pop culture references and the irreverence, that's the sort of character that would definitely appeal to me. In writing novels, I mean, there's some things I just want to do personally, but like nothing, there's no like licensed character that I'd like to do, that I'm like dying to write a novel of. Maybe something related to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Possibly, but if something materialized from that, but yeah.
Okay. Now, I know you said that you wrote you've done you've worked you wrote for plays, you've done screenplays and so forth. Now I'm joking on this part. If a TV movie or producer calls you and says, hey, we have a blank check for you to revive one of your favorite TV shows or movies, what would it be and why?
If I had to revive one of my well, maybe it would be something related to Elmore Leonard.
Yes.
Maybe one of the characters from the Raylan novels. There was one character in a book called Pronto, where Harry Arno was a character. Yes, I think like somebody like that, like a spin-off from an Elmore Leonard novel, would be very appealing. He was definitely one of my favorite crime writers. So doing something with his work would be great.
Mhm. That sounds pretty cool. All right. So what is the most
Or
fun?
adapting one of his books into a movie or something like that.
Oh, that'd be nice. All right. So what is the most fun or exciting thing you love about writing? It could be whether it's novel, comics, or screenplays or plays.
Um, I guess the funnest thing is just the act of writing. I think those moments when you just get lost in the work and it just, if it's flowing easily and you just get lost in it and it's, it's just sort of like a relaxing sort of escaping feeling. It doesn't happen too often because sometimes there's a lot of procrastination, there's a lot of anxiety, but like I think those moments, sort of like a writer's high, is the best way I would describe it.
All right. Do you have a favorite convention moment, whether it is a fan or creator?
I guess my favorite convention moment was going to like a San Diego Comic-Con and winding up hanging out with George R. Martin because we had the same publicist at the time at the Penguin, or he was associated with one of the or his publicist was associated with publicist Penguin, but we're in the same group of like several people who went out to like bars in San Diego, and he told a lot of old stories about his publishing, and that was an interesting night.
That's pretty cool. Do you have any convention or store signing appearances that's coming like in the fall? Like we're looking probably like in August, September.
Nothing I could think of right off the bat.
Okay. All right. Now, a couple more questions. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
To where?
To Hawaii.
To Hawaii.
Yeah.
I have been to Hawaii. Yes, I've been to Big Island.
Oh, nice.
I've actually only been to Hawaii once. Actually, it was for a writers conference. It was like the Left Coast Crime writers conference was held in Hawaii one year.
Wow, that is pretty cool. Now, I'm joking on this part. When are you going to write your next book about Hawaii? And if you do, will you put it in your contract that you and your family need to live in Hawaii at a nice house, or even in Maui for 6 months?
Sure. A friend of mine just moved to Hawaii, actually to Big Island. So, yeah, you never know. Maybe I'd have to go on a research trip or something.
All right, last question. Any closing words to our listeners?
Yeah, if you check out The Next Time I Die, I'd love to know what you think. Follow me on Twitter at Jason Starr Books, Instagram at Jason Starr Books. I love to interact with fans and readers, so let me know what you think.
All right. So, Jason, thank you very much for your time. I want to wish you all the success, the continued success with your new novel, The Next Time I Die. I also want to thank Hannah of Superfan Promotions, for help setting up this interview. Hannah, thank you very much. If you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader, please check out Jason's latest novel, The Next Time I Die, from Hardcase Crimes. It is available through Jason's website, jasonstarr.com. Or you can go through Amazon or your local bookstore. And I'm being serious. Ask your LCS to order a copy. To spotlight Jason's works, and to start a conversation about, to talk about his other works from AWA and his other novels as well. So I want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Our LCS is Cowabunga Comics out of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, and their mail order company, Deep Discount Comics. And we went there, and we were actually invoice number 00001. We were the very first their very first customer, which was kind of cool. They've been nothing short of fantastic, customer service wise. Discounts, they were very close, if not the same or better than DCBS on a lot of things. Over and above, customer service wise, always taking care of us, going the extra mile, so responsive, getting instantaneous responses back to questions about things, and to the point where knowing the stuff you like and anticipating your needs and having it suggested that you might want to add this to your order already before you even have to think about it. That's kind of cool. Really quality experience. So we love working with Cowabunga and Deep Discount, and that's why they're in our show notes every single episode, and have been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. That we leave them there because we like them. They're cool, good people. That's why they're in there. By God, they'd tell you to, if you've got a local comic book shop that you love, stay with them, because everybody needs to support their local comic shops. But if you're looking, check them out. You can check them out in the show notes. There's plenty of ways to get a hold of them. Either get on their list, just so you can check and see what kind of FOC and pre-order stuff they have and the discounts, and they'll send it to you each month, get you on that email list. And you can check out their shop, because they have a great shop of exclusive Cowabunga variants. Amazing stuff. Yes, they've always been there for us, and we take them for granted. So there you go. Now you know.